Eric, it is so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Naomi. It's great to be here. It's a real pleasure.
This is huge, okay? We've never met, but let me tell you, I'm from New York City. You know I know you, honey. I know you. I know of you, okay? I mean, considering all that you've done, you can take your pick, okay? You can be in the house resting. You don't have to keep giving it to us, but you do, Eric. And so I want to know, why did you choose to play Daniel Malloy at this time?
Well, the realm I live in right now is I don't necessarily know what's coming up in my life, and then I get a phone call. But this phone call came at a funny time because literally the day before I got the phone call, I had been thinking there's one thing left on my bucket list that I haven't done, and that's play a vampire. And the next day I get a call, but they said, but you're not going to be playing a vampire, you're going to be playing Daniel Malloy. Now, I knew the book because I had read it when it came out, and I loved it. But my whole approach to these things are always, let me see the script. I had scripts sent to me, and I started digging down into what this was all about, and I could see that this Daniel Malloy vibrates very close to my vibrational plane. He's in his 60s. He's a writer, and I've spent a lot of time writing. He had a moment, and now he feels that moment maybe has passed, and he's pondering his own mortality. So you asked what's motivating me. That was one part. Mm-hmm. The other part, and this is sincere, is that I'm a fan of Game of Thrones. And specifically, I was very interested in this Jacob Anderson guy and what he was doing on that show because, people watch actors and they do things like they yell and scream at each other in a scene and they go, wow, that's great acting. But any actor can tell you that's not the hard stuff. The hard stuff is the subtle stuff. And Jacob in Game of Thrones was, I thought, amazing. So when I heard that he was going to be the vampire, one of the vampires, I was up for that. Mm-hmm.
So does that mean you've been into horror and thriller and sci-fi and all that kind of genre stuff well before this role came along?
Absolutely. I mean, yes. I mean, I was really into this magazine, all the Tales from the Crypt and Eerie and all these weird, creepy things. When I was a kid, I read horror stories. I loved all that stuff. I loved Edgar Allan Poe. But the vampire thing calls to me. I mean, first of all, I saw Frank Langella do Dracula on Broadway in the mid-'70s, and that was my favorite thing I've ever seen on Broadway, and he was incredible. And I was in the last row of the balcony, and this man, he had the entire house in the palm of his hands, and it was scary, and I thought, that's the kind of shit I want to do. I want to do what this guy's doing. Mm-hmm. I think there's something primal about blood and fangs and living forever. There's something sexual, particularly with regards to Anne Rice. There's this sex thing kind of going on all the time there. There's a sort of a rhythm to the sucking and everything. And it's like, whoa. But of course, it speaks to us. And I think it's a really important sort of metaphor for the drive that pushes us into our lives, and also the sort of inevitability of death and what that says about the life while we're here on Earth. And so I've always found them to be, I'm transfixed by vampire stuff.
It's funny, though, you had read the books. You're taking on something big, right? We're talking Anne Rice's blank, okay? Whenever it's someone's name, blank, it's like, okay, this is a legacy. We are here for this. Did that feel stressful?
To be honest, I didn't look to the book. I look at the script that they're going to have me do. And that's where I do my work. Mm-hmm. I have to sit and focus and really think about what they're saying and what's going on here. What's going on between these people? Mm-hmm. I thought that, basically I was going to come in and I would say, so Louis, tell me about how you became a vampire. And then I'd be gone. And then there would be like Louis for an hour. And then at the end I'd go, that's very interesting. And that would be my job. But then when I read the script, it was like, whoa, this is way more complicated than that.
There's a lot going on for Daniel Malloy. Even from the first time we see you. I mean, said, honey, the moment you go and you get that mail and that hand is shaking, I said, okay, here we go. Here we go.
Well, a lot is being set up right in that moment. And especially what's going on when Daniel is meeting Louis again in Dubai, and it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really dangerous. Daniel still has a scar on his neck from the last time he got bit by this guy.
Yeah. That first time Malloy and Louis went to have an interview, things didn't go so well. Okay? Last interview went badly. Let's give a little listen to the dark past.
So forgive me if I'm a little nervous.
After all I've told you, is what you asked for, boy! Yeah, well, you don't know what human life is like. I mean, you've forgotten, man. No! Hey, stop!
You were disrespectful.
I was high.
You were not worthy of my story then.
Maybe your story wasn't worth telling.
Whew. Whew. The past. The past.
I think that Daniel, as written in the script, has said to himself, this is a chance to go back and do it right. I missed a big opportunity 40-something years ago, and now I'm going to go and I'm going to blow everybody's mind, and I'm going to get, another Pulitzer, and I'm going to grab that brass ring, and I'm going to make a lot of money. I mean, I'm going to be 70 next year. When you're my age, you are thinking about, okay, so what happens like 20 years down the line? Especially your friends are croaking and stuff. You're thinking about this stuff all the time. And so sucking a little blood becomes a big temptation.
Well, you say that, as you get older, but I also think I'm not in my 70s, honey, but after the last 2.5 years, I'm thinking about the future too, right? We're all, I think, regardless of how old you are now, we have all been made to face mortality and isolation in a way that really does charge this story, and in particularly the relationship between Daniel and Louis. I mean, what I think is interesting is because you can obviously hear from Malloy, he is high. And then, of course, you say, I was high. But I find it also you're a journalist? You're pretty high. I don't know how much journalistic work you were doing when you were high as a kite.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anybody, whatever work you make, you go back and you look at what you did a long time before you go, oh, that's so amateur. Oh, I'm almost embarrassed. I was so sloppy then. Mm-hmm. Because I hear that tape and everything, I'm reminded of the young me. And you're not old enough to be at this place yet. But when you get to a certain point in your life, you can go back and look at the young you and you go, that's not even me. Is that me? I'm not that person anymore. I'm so different than that person. So there's a kind of a shocking feeling of I'm not that person, but in a way I kind of want to be that person still. Yet I remember how uncomfortable I was being that person, but I had all this energy and I was ready to rock every day. I got out of bed and I was like, where's it happening? I want to go. Yeah. Whereas now I get out of bed and it's where's the coffee?
You're almost exclusively acting opposite Jacob Anderson, who plays Louis.
Yeah.
And as he tells his story, we see Jacob in flashback as he meets and he falls in love with Lestat, played by Sam Reid. Now, how much time did you all get to know each other before the cameras started rolling?
We didn't do a huge amount of rehearsal, or at least I don't remember us doing a huge amount of rehearsal. We did rehearse. Jacob insisted on learning, memorizing, and saying to the camera every line he says on the show. So even if it's voiceover, he's saying all that stuff to the camera and to me. So I'm sitting there listening to him and looking into his, and I'm not going to give him anything halfway. We're going all the way if we're going to do this. So I'm deep in there with him, and he hypnotizes me. He's telling me these stories, and I'm looking into his eyes, and I have to kind of snap out of it. To fall into another actor's eyes and really have those moments, and it felt like we were there. For me, it's what it's all about. That's why I act. I act because I want to pretend. I like to pretend. And when I'm pretending all the way and we're going to this other place, it's like flying. It's like it's not like anything else. I love it. It's my first love. I'm Daniel Malloy. It is 10:08 in the morning on June 14th, 2022. I'm in the penthouse apartment of the Al Sharaf Towers across from Mr.
Louis Dupont Dulac.
So, Mr. Dulac, how long have you been dead?
You know, vampires, they have all these powers. They can do all these things. If you could have any vampire power, which one would it be for you?
Well, this is besides immortality, you're saying.
Yes, besides, right. Like, would you want to read minds?
Yeah,
Would
I think the mind reading and holding somebody in your thrall through hypnosis is kind of the kind of classic Dracula stuff with those eyes and saying, you know, come to me, come to me. And I like necks. I'm a neck man, so it all makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, you heard it here first, folks. Eric Bogosian, neck man, is what he said to us.
Yeah.
But it's so funny to me that you would say holding people in your thrall, because as someone who, you know, did a lot of solo shows, that was what you were doing.
Well, I started acting when I was a kid, when I was in high school, and the connection between myself and the audience it's a fantastic feeling. I feel like I'm fully alive when I'm acting, more so than even in my day-to-day life. There's no second guessing. There's just be the guy that you are. And then if you can connect, which eventually I found a way to do on film and TV, it's intense. You know, the vibing with other actors, especially generous actors, talented, smart, generous actors like Jacob. We're just so lucky, very lucky.
Yeah. And we, the audience, are so very lucky too. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, telling me all things Malloy. You are wonderful. And, this show is so good. And you guys are in for more and more good stuff this season.
Thank you for the embrace, Naomi.
Sam Reid, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thank you for having me, Naomi.
You know what? Don't you be nice? Don't you be sweet, okay? Because I'm coming in here and I'm mad at you. I'm mad at you, Sam Reid. Because my first question is this: how dare you? Okay, that's what I have to say.
What are you referring to exactly? Which bit?
Here's what I think of Lestat. I think that Lestat is a messy bitch who lives for drama.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
What did you know about Lestat going into the audition?
I mean, I knew the books. I've known them for a very, very long time. I had read that they were making it, and I was very excited, and I sort of hoped that I would get the chance to do an audition for it. The thing that freaked me out a little bit about that audition was that majority of that audition was in French.
Oh, wow.
And it had all the lines in English, but it said in parentheses in French. And so, you know, I studied French in school. My sister speaks fluent French, but I am not that good at French. So I spent a lot of time learning French. So that was quite stressful.
I saw a little bit. You and Jacob, you did your sort of chemistry test over Zoom.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I mean, does anyone have chemistry over Zoom? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so tough.
Yeah. I don't really know what they were looking for or how you're supposed to gauge chemistry as well from that, because it was really glitchy and we were like speaking on top of each other and, you know, trying really hard to like act into the camera, which just wasn't working. But, you know, Jacob is such a lovely person, such a really fantastic actor and so easy to be around. And, you know, I can see that he was going to be a very easy person to fall in love with. So it was fun. In fact, I just came from having ice cream with Jacob and he says hello.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed. I want these moments, because give me that footage, okay? I want ice cream footage.
Yeah.
I want strolling the streets of downtown New Orleans footage.
Yeah, and we hang out all the time and we've become very, very good friends, because it is a crazy journey that we're on and it was a crazy job. So it's really lovely to have such a good friend.
I have a question about, you know, because Lestat has had he's had a life well before the show starts, right?
Yeah.
And he's been on this journey, and then you have the different versions of Lestat we meet in the book.
Yeah.
So you're sort of pulling from this amalgamation a little bit. What kind of conversations did you have with the showrunner, Roland Jones, about your version of Lestat?
Yeah, well, I think the premise, and which Roland has done very well, is for Louis to revisit the interview. And so Louis now has a more nuanced, you know, way of describing Lestat. So I think that was the first thing that I was most curious about with Roland was, okay, how much of this is real Lestat and how much of this is Louis' perspective of Lestat? Because obviously this is a memory and, you know, this is all through Louis' eyes. And is this actually how Lestat is, or is he different? And I think we play with that on and off what is really important about this season or this show was that you are playing a character seen through somebody else's eyes.
Right. Oh my God, it's a Gordian knot. It's a little bit of a layer for me. When you say that, do you know what I mean? 'Cause you're like, okay, well, what?
It's a big layer.
It's like,
and everyone kept telling me, stop thinking about that too much. Just don't think about it. And I didn't. And I don't think about it too much when I'm doing it. You know, like
right.
You know, there will come a day, I think, when Lestat turns around and goes, actually, this is how it fucking happened.
Okay, well, Sam, you just making me so mad because you're too kind and you're too funny. And I said, no, I've come here with hard-hitting questions and I'm living it, Lestat.
Go for it.
No, but this gets me, though, to what I think is so fun about the show and what I think it's doing so right when it comes to a genre story. And that is the humor and the personality. Let's listen to a scene that really captures the humor between these new gay vampire husbands who, of course, are having a conversation in their coffins.
I don't like sleeping angry.
For the record, if disrespect was done to you, I would have killed him myself. Well, what can I do to make it up to you?
I want to buy the Fair Play Saloon.
That's ambitious.
You don't want to help, I do it myself.
Ridiculous of you to mix human and vampire business. It always ends poorly. But how can I stop you? How can I say no to you?
I mean, Lestat is out here. Like, it is such a funny moment. For Lestat, he's like, okay. It's like, you want to own a club? And I even in that moment, I thought it was so funny because I'm like, Louis, you have unlimited power and unlimited life, and what you want is a club. Babe, dream bigger. Dream bigger.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it goes to show, like, how in love Lestat is with Louis, that he's gonna, like, you know, give him these things that mean absolutely nothing in the broader context of vampire world. But what Lestat doesn't understand is that Louis' humanity and what he needs is that power, you know, and it is control over his own life. So I think there's a lesson for both of them there. And at this moment, Lestat doesn't understand.
Okay, here's another question I have. And this is I just need you to tell me because I know there's an answer and it's just making me crazy. Where's Lestat's money coming from?
I mean, he's got investments and, you know, like he's got bankers and he's got lawyers in France. Literally, when he got turned into a vampire, he was given like the most ginormous amount of money, an entire room of treasure.
You're giving us so much backstory. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. If you think about inflation over the years and then reinvestment, I mean, it's just like an obscene amount of money. And also, if you live through the centuries, you're able to follow the trends of markets and understand the way.
That would be like why I would be a vampire or like travel in time. You know, when people talk about traveling in time and they're always like, I go back and kill Hitler. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I do that too. But also I buy some property.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? I just really get some good spaces. And like, I go back to maybe like 1899 when it's cheap or something.
Super
and
cheap.
Just buy it all up.
Yeah, literally. You know what I mean? Could you imagine?
Right? Park Avenue? One Park Avenue apartment. Can you imagine?
Exactly. I mean, that's why all the vampires are kind of pretty damn rich, to be honest. Like Louis, 2022 Louis, when he's in Dubai, like he is really mega rich. He's got Francis Bacon's.
Real? Okay, I didn't even clock. I don't think I even clocked it.
Yeah. That guy is rich, like mega rich.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You also know he's rich because his like penthouse is so cold. I feel like rich people really like stone floors and sharp edges. You know, they want you to know that if you're poor, you could die in here.
Yeah, exactly. And you're never comfortable.
You're not supposed to be comfortable. Why do you think Lestat chose Louis? Because I do think for me as a viewer, there is a question from moment one. Do these two men really love each other? Are they just kind of entangled? You know, the whole time you're watching, it's like, do I want them to be together?
Yeah, exactly. But being a vampire is hard. It's very, very difficult to endure and to exist forever, basically. Yeah. And you need to have quite a lot of strength and a lot of gumption and a lot of, you know, a lot of internal power to be able to endure. And I think Lestat recognizes that in Louis. When he sees him on the street and he sees, holy shit, that very, very, very beautiful man just pulled a knife on his brother in the middle of the street to look powerful, to save his own skin. And he has enough strength to do that. I think Lestat can see this guy has potential to really endure. He's also got the hots for him really badly.
Right, exactly.
Because So it's also that. He tries really hard to be just like a good kind of like normal guy as best as he can, you know. And I think when he has dinner with his family, you know, and he screws up, he does actually feel quite bad that he's made a mess of that, because he was trying really hard to be on his best behavior. I mean, instead he sort of hypnotizes his brother and makes a big scene. But you know, when he's
Lestat's trying to be good, but he just cannot help but hypnotize his brother and make a scene.
Yeah, well, you know, like, you know, he starts making innuendos and he brings up God, which is never a good thing for Lestat.
Well, they say never at the dinner table. No religion, no politics.
No God at the dinner table, yeah. And so he does his absolute best to pretend like he's drinking wine and eating food.
What was it like to go from COVID isolation to sex scenes? Like, to go from literally being like, I'm in the house 6 feet away from everybody to let's show booties, you know?
How do I phrase that? You know what? The sex scenes were the kind of easier part because we're all sort of like in the same little bubble together. And we're getting tested, you know, like every day. It's like constantly testing. So I think that's what love in the time of the pandemic is really. But, you know, it was a funny time because we had these mad contacts on, and the contacts are quite cloudy. I think Jacob and I really clung to each other a lot of the time because, you know, we couldn't really see. And so we could and everyone else has got masks on, and, you know, you can only really like just see the person who's just in front of you, and you're just sort of like getting through it. And so it was this sort of like very sort of weird, languid dream like place.
Wow.
But super fun.
Yeah. Oh my God. Wait, can we talk a bit more about the contacts, the makeup, the process of becoming the vampires? I cannot take the nails. I could not take nails. Long nails and then cutting everyone. And I'm like,
the nails.
God.
Oh my God. The nails were a real process because the nails originally, they had press-on nails, like stick-on nails. And I have so much action and grabbing stuff, and I'm doing stuff all the time. And my nails are just like constantly popping off, like always off. And so they said, okay, I think you should get acrylic nails. And it took me a long, long time to get used to having acrylic nails. Yeah. I felt really debilitated because I couldn't pick anything up. And also, like, a lot of people would just come up and talk to me. I'd be in a restaurant and someone would be like, oh, hey, I love your nails. So it was like a free reign for some people to come up and like want to chat. So I obviously became a nicer looking person with the nails on. So I appreciated that. Yeah.
I get that. It's like nails, and also when you have hair. I don't know if your hair you've had your hair shorter before, right?
It's usually always short.
So like when you have the length, you're like, let me flip it to emphasize my point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, the hair, I was really adamant that the hair had to be the hair. My hair was shorter when I first arrived, and it grew out over the show. And so we extended it with extensions, and then it became my own hair. But I remember when I first arrived, Roland was like, you know, I think maybe you could have short hair and your hair looks good, like, you know, sort of like, and I was like, no. I think it's like, you know, if you're going to play a character that is like Lestat, you kind of have to, you know, have the nails and you have to have the hair. It's like very important. And yeah, he does use the hair to accentuate things. Yeah. You know, if he's really pissed off, he'll flip it all the way back, you know?
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. I mean, like, there are times where we're almost getting the drag queen level of drama from Lestat.
Absolutely.
He wants you and everybody in a 10-mile radius to know when he's mad.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Like you say, it's drama. He loves drama. I love him very dearly, so I never want to say anything bad about him. But if he wants to create a bit of drama, he'll create a bit of drama. You know, right, and if he wants to be really seductive in a moment and then flip it and be really ugly, he will. You know what I mean? He does what he wants whenever he wants, and he will make sure that everyone's watching him do it because he knows he looks great doing it. He's a super vain guy, but his heart is in the right place. Really, I'd say.
Sam, no, it ain't. Sam, no, it ain't. I'm just going to have to push back, okay? I know you played him. I know you researched him. I'm saying you're wrong. One thing that I think Roland does so well that you and Jacob capture is, you know, this is now an interracial relationship. It charges these questions that Anne was already asking, right? These larger questions of what is it to be human and what is power and what are relationships. Let's just listen to a clip where Louis calls out this power dynamic.
This was your man's escort I sent to me states.
I was hungry.
Stone's throw from your place of business. What were you thinking?
Disrespecting me.
How did he do that?
He told me I did a good job.
You are a library of confusion.
Some things you don't get about America, Lestat.
Yes, let's have this conversation again.
Color, white, Creole, French, queer, half queer, mostly queer. What is it?
Non-discriminating.
Complicated situation we got here is what I'm saying.
Couple of parish priests go missing. People say fine. Most likely kid fiddlers. But this was an important man in town. The police will be looking for this man, Fledgling.
That's why we got this piece here.
No, you need to show restraint, Fledgling.
You need to stop using that word right now, because it sounded a little like slave. Well, that's what it fucking sound like. It's what it feel like sometimes.
And the carousel comes around again.
Fuck you.
Do you think that, you know, being a vampire, being hundreds of years old, do you think that Lestat thinks he's above race?
I don't know if he thinks of it like that. I think he definitely acknowledges the prejudices that exist, and he acknowledges as soon as he meets Louis. But I think once you've become a vampire, I think you can transcend that. And I think that's what Lestat fully misunderstands about Louis' situation. I think he has a lot to learn in that regard.
Lestat is kind of like, humans are trifles. We don't have time for it. I mean, Louis believes humanity is worthwhile, and he still kind of wants to be a part of it.
I think he just doesn't understand yet. I think Louis, at this point, doesn't understand the enormity of living forever. I think it's just, you know, you've just become a vampire. You know, your family's still around. I think the hard thing is once you see everyone you know grow old, die, you see wars break out, riots break out, you see politicians change, you go through the ages of centuries, and you see that humanity is in this fucked up cycle that just continues on the same hamster wheel. And you're this fantastic creature that exists outside of humanity. Like, why would you need to bother engaging with the, you know, small little fancies of these human beings? But Lestat, you know, he sort of has this choice. He's like, do I just fucking live it up and have a good time and make a joke about it and find it funny and look for the light moments. He is very oscillating though, you know, so sometimes the joke's at his own expense and sometimes the joke's at everyone else's expense. But he's the one who's always laughing. But what I would say is that what Lestat does feel about humanity is through art. Like there is a beautiful, pure expression, and he really, really respects and admires that and loves musicians and artists.
That was where Lestat separated man from food. There was one issue, however, that threatened to pop the bubble of our Italian holiday. And that was the tenor playing Ernesto. And Lestat was unamused.
Wrong.
He sat the tenor down, opened up the score in front of him, and sang as it was written. Lestat removed a lifetime of confidence, of joy, in less than half an hour.
Ero nel suo serato quando l'ha scritta.
That was one of my favorite scenes. Lestat literally just being like, again. No, this is the note. This is the note.
I mean, Roland Jones, I mean, what an amazing gift to an actor to write a scene like that. It was just like, oh, I couldn't believe when I was reading it. And then it dawned on me that I was like, oh, I'm going to have to play piano, sing, and speak Italian, and kill somebody. And then, you know, like, and I was like, holy shit. But yeah, exactly. Don't be pitchy. Don't screw it up. You know, otherwise you will die. Yeah. But if you're good, you know, he'll lavish you with praise and flowers every day. If you are a good musician or artist in his eyes, he will make sure that you have felt appreciated. If you're bad, yes, you'll die.
So the stakes are pretty chill.
Yeah.
Okay. So either you have a patron for life or you die.
Yeah.
Now, before you leave, we're going to end with a little segment that we like to call a little taste. Without giving away any spoilers, can you give us a little taste of what is to come in future episodes? A little hint of something people might want to look out for? I know, without a spoiler, it's very tricky.
Whoa. So there's so much. And yeah, I'd say you get to see more gifts. I would say the cloud gift is coming.
Ooh, write it down, you guys. Write it down. Keep an eye out. Sam Reid. You know what? You ain't no evil vampire. You a good actor. Thanks for coming and talking to me, All Things Episode 2. You're the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, y'all. I am here with Louis DuPont de Locke himself. Jacob Anderson. Henny.
Hello, Naomi. I don't know what that wasn't even really Louis' voice. You know, sometimes you open your mouth and it doesn't come out how you thought it was going to come out.
Always, absolutely, very relatable. First of all, let's talk about this, okay, honey? Can we talk about how you stay in the prestige world? We need to talk to your agent. You are coming through, honey. You said Broadchurch. You said Game of Thrones. You said Interview with a Vampire. This is what I call all bangers, no mash. Okay.
It's not all bangers, honestly. just take a cursory glance at my IMDb. They're not all bangers. I've been very lucky, though. I have been very lucky, the things that I've been involved in. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's all bangers, no mash. And look, we like a bit of mash, right? Like, mash is good. Some carbohydrates.
Well, that's true. A little carb to line the stomach. But, like, this, especially, Louis, like, you're doing it all. You're serving us dialects, okay? You're serving us languages. You're serving us time periods, hunty.
Look, what can I say? I'm a very lucky man. This is definitely, though, I would say, like, of everything I've ever done, I've never in my professional life felt this comfortable in what I was wearing. Like wearing like a beautiful suit every day.
Really?
And it fits me and I can move in it. And I can, like, it was pretty amazing, the things that I got to do. There was never a normal day on the set of Interview with the Vampire.
Well, really, it is a stunning show. I love a show where I get to get lost in a world. I say, take me away. Like, now on Earth is too much. And so,
yeah.
But before we get into our hard-hitting questions, because I am a journalist, if nothing else, if you were an actual vampire, would you eat people?
Needs must. I guess I probably would. I think I'd rather eat people than rats. See, this is the thing. This is what we get into in the show. Is I was just about to say, but I'd eat bad people. But then what does that mean?
Right.
That's such a complicated thing. Maybe I'd only eat people that were just about to die.
Okay.
Like minutes away from dying.
Okay. But I don't know if that's going to be that good blood. That minutes away from dying blood, it's not going to have the flavor. That's what I think.
It's not sweet blood.
No.
But no. It's like vaguely ethical blood. Maybe.
Vaguely ethical blood. Okay, season 2. That's what we're going to unpack. We're going to get into vaguely ethical blood. Okay, now here's the thing, though. This is now another show that has its associated fandom. And this is a show that has people who have their expectations and their needs. And, it's so much bigger than the character you're playing, right? Like, it has a life of its own to some extent.
Yeah.
How do you approach something like that? Do you shut it all out and just kind of stay on the page with your script? Do you devour everything else to make sure you're doing it differently? What's that process?
I feel very, very connected to Louis on lots of different levels. I feel very understood by him and I feel like I understand him. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing to hang on to when you're playing a character that's adapted from any, source material is like, what does that character mean to you? How do you connect to that character? That's the thing to keep with you, because you're never going to make everyone happy.
Right.
Like, everybody's not going to be satisfied with choices you make. But I really love Louis, so I decided to continue with love, and hopefully that's enough, love and admiration.
Yes. I mean, I think it's obvious in the portrayal of this character who is so complicated, and he has so much. It's he has enough going on before he becomes a vampire. Okay, it felt like Louis. I said, honey, you got a full plate.
Yeah.
Are you sure you want to add vampire to the mix?
I know it's like kind of the funniest thing about Louis' whole existence, but also it's like the central theme for him is like he thought that he was going to have a way out of his identity crisis, and the grass is always greener because when he becomes a vampire, he's just handed a bigger identity crisis. Bless him.
Yeah. As we're saying, Lestat and Louis have this complicated relationship. It's an existential and ethical questioning going on in episode 3 between who should we eat and how, and then also monogamy, loyalty, Jonah, Antoinette. It's like, what is this relationship? What are we committing to? What are we saying we are? So let's listen to a clip that shooketh.
What can I say? I'm a lot. I'm not perfect.
I knew you were there.
Yes.
You jealous?
Yes. I don't like sharing.
What about Antoinette?
It's different. I don't have feelings for her.
He did me some face and I drove him home. I heard your heart stamping! You watched the whole thing like some creeper.
And then I watched you pull over and drain a dog and run down an alleyway for 2 more rats. This is not a life.
That's because you took my life. I got nothing. I lost everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, that moment is the crux of the episode, and it's the crux of their relationship, right? Like, to me, that clip tells you so much about who these two people are and how they view relationships.
Yeah. I think there's like a thing between them about boundaries, right? Like, Lestat's, like, he was being a creeper. He went and followed Louis. He felt like he could do that, and he's being possessive. This scene really illustrates a larger thing in this episode of their differences are widening. They're getting further and further apart from each other and sort of realizing that this is probably not going to work.
Because I thought it was going to take Louis more time to admit that. Do you believe Louis loves Lestat?
Yes. I think that if Louis didn't love Lestat on some level, then he would have already left that situation. He gets to that point in this episode, and I think he's a man on fire. He's just it's going down for him. Everything is falling apart. But he also, when he says, you took my life, the reason that all of this is happening is because you took my life is not true. He's blaming Lestat. It maybe wouldn't be fair for him to put all the blame on Lestat, but he just doesn't know where to put it, I think. And he's got a lot of hubris, Louis. He's just he's a snob. He comes from a life where he's always kind of had what he wanted. He's been given everything, and then was in a situation where he had to earn everything. But I think he still is looking for places to blame mistakes that he's made and things that he hasn't quite thought of, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Louis' reckoning. He's reckoning in 1910. He's reckoning in the present. Certainly a weariness with an added H. Jacob.
Yeah, there's definitely a weariness. I'm quite an anxious person, and Louis is quite an anxious person. It's a bit of an understatement.
Oh, yes, Louis is very, very anxious. And Lestat is cool and collected, which feels like a very relatable relationship issue to me. How much did you talk with Sam Reid, who plays Lestat, about this relationship dynamic?
I think this probably annoyed Sam quite a lot, but I always used to think about the sort of bickering between the two of them as okay, so what is this in a real world setting? What is the most domestic version of this disagreement that they're having?
Yeah.
When we talked about stuff before we shot, occasionally Sam would be like, yeah, but we're vampires. And I'd be like, yeah, but you didn't take the bins out, did you? And that's annoying. I think that it was a scene where we were disposing of bodies, and I was like, it's bins. I've walked you to the bin to explain to you how to throw away a trash can, Oh yeah, trash. not been.
No,
Yeah.
I know. I'm bilingual. I know both. Talking about Sam and sort of the way, how much time did y'all get before you started actually shooting? It's like, okay, we're in love now, and it's going to be very tortured and complicated. Rolling.
Yeah. I don't know if I completely believe in luck, but I think there's like a weird cosmic luck in this whole thing. It is a huge roll of the dice. The first day we met each other, obviously we both had our masks on, and it was we had a hug, and we were like, all right. And then we just spent the next day just walking around New Orleans and getting to know each other. And I truly love that man so much. Like we connected so quickly and just found and I think part of that as well is that there's a level of trust that that we had to have.
Right.
Otherwise we weren't going to be able to do this at those hours and those scenes and the intimacy of their relationship, and also like the toxicity and the fire in it. Like we had to really hold each other and be like, all right, have we got each other's back? And we did. We're just like, we're in this together. Let's listen to each other and try and have fun. And we did. We had a lot of fun. I thought that taking this role would be quite triggering for me in lots of different ways. I thought it was going to force me to have to reconcile with lots of feelings I had. I thought it was going to be just a guilt and shame and despair fest for 6 months. And actually I just found it really, really cathartic being Louis. And Louis helped me a lot. I think there's something about acceptance in Louis, and acceptance of self, and this is who I am, this is who I've been, and I'm enduring, and I'm choosing to keep going. I'm choosing to accept who I am. And that was really helpful for me. So I rather than sort of feeling tortured, I think I ended up just feeling very held, very comforted by the whole thing in a weird sort of way.
Storyville is the sinking ship. And naturally, you are the first to drown. But that's your problem, Louis. Always has been. You're arrogant. You haven't accepted your place in this world. And your pale lover with his seemingly endless supply of capital. And the weird goings-on in your sodomite townhouse won't change the fact that you're a tiny man flying too close to the sun. And that's what I am, Louis. The sun. Walk away.
Why's your heart beating so fast? You said I'm arrogant? Maybe I am arrogant. What are you? I'm a vampire.
Ooh, Fenwick got his. I will say, did not mind it. I was very excited. At the same time, Louis is out here just, draining rats and draining dogs. And so it was such a big leap to go from that to not just am I going to finally eat a person, I'm going to eat a public person and then string him up by the entrails in front of everybody.
Yeah, there are a few things in this episode. I think there's a racial component to it as well, where Louis' business is falling apart, and it's because of gentrification, racism, and he's feeling more and more helpless. And Lestat keeps telling him to be more and more free and to give in to who you are and be the vampire I know you are and all this kind of stuff. And Louis but me being a vampire doesn't buy me out of the way other people perceive me. It doesn't buy me out of this real shit. in the world. I can't just be like you. I can't be this sort of mischievous baby running around, having fun, eating people here and there and doing whatever I like. Like I'm still going to be a black man as soon as I walk out of this house. And I think that that's like a huge part of their rift as well. Lestat just not understanding that.
Right.
But this is very much a personal vendetta. This isn't an emotional kill, but he just does it in this very like detached way that he hasn't really been able to connect to before. He has a reason now. He has a purpose for killing. It's not just like trying to make Lestat happy or not just trying to, do what he thinks he should be doing. But the repercussions of that are arguably disastrous for human beings. And there's a human toll that it takes.
Mm-hmm. I didn't get the sense, though, despite the fact that this is a personal kill, I wasn't sure if Louis felt the actual catharsis from it. Did you feel like Louis was meant to be satisfied and by killing Fenwick the way he did?
No, I don't think he finds any. I don't think he gets satisfaction from it. And I think that kicks off, this like emptiness about his place in humanity. There's a version of this scene where it's like, it's him trying out what he sort of proposes at the beginning. Like, why don't we spare like the good humans and only feed from those that are like an illness on the world? But it still doesn't give him the satisfaction that he needs. I'm not entirely sure that Louis is ever going to be satisfied. For all of Anne Rice's vampires, it's about endurance, isn't it? It's about, can you live with what you are and who you are and what you do? Can you live with that and still go on another day or night?
Mm-hmm. Does Louis regret becoming a vampire?
Yeah, I think so. But then he wouldn't want to be I don't think he'd want to be human again either.
Okay. Huh.
He's very complicated.
Yeah. Well, end of episode 1, when you go to the church and start to confess, and it really feels to me, I was like, if Lestat hadn't come in, Louis was going to kill himself that night.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Louis was getting it off his chest. He was going to get right with God, and then he was going to go do something.
Yeah, that's how I see it. I think the fact that he is never going to find satisfaction is what throws him into despair every day. Louis feels that there's just something broken in him. If episode 2 is Louis being like, I don't think that I'm ever going to be like a true vampire, I feel like this episode is Louis being like, well, I'm never going to truly be human again. And he has to kind of come to terms with that. Well, am I going to be a human or am I going to be a vampire?
Right.
And he's both in lots of ways. It's complicated. It changes all the time, I think. And it always did for me. The answer always changed. And I think that that's kind of, again, it's a very human thing. Your answers do change every day.
Yeah. The goalposts move.
Yeah.
And I think with somebody like Louis, the world has to literally go up in flames for him to let it go. You're a vampire. You have all the power in the world. And Louis is like, I would like to buy the azalea. It's like, Louis, honey, think bigger. Think bigger. Stop trying to be a businessman. But that is holding on to human notions of power and what you think will make you feel good, right? Like that is his big swing. And it's like, no, like you got to let all this go. Louis got to let go of all the human stuff. But that then brings me to Claudia.
I ran from the quarter that night. Ran to where the violence spread most wild. I stumbled through the streets like an irrational child who had tested his strength on a small bird and now asked, can I make it whole again? One of those inconceivable moments where who you were before and who you'll be forever after is marked in time. I could not save the azalea. I could not save Storyville. I could not save the aunt on the wrong side of the wall, but I could save her. My light, my Claudia, my redemption.
You know, we're talking about him being detached and coming off of embracing his vampire nature, choosing to take a child. It's sort of like, obviously the opposite of detachment, the opposite of letting go.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, like you said, he's not thinking big. I think that on some level, Claudia is a way for him to absolve himself of guilt. Okay, if I can save this one human, then I can kind of save them all, at least in my eyes. I can forgive myself for what I've done, for what I've wrought on this community, if I just save her. And also the way my mother and my sister just looked at me makes me think that I have just lost them. I have lost my sister, who is possibly the only person that like I feel truly understands me aside from Lestat, and that's not working out at the moment. Like, I think she's a band-aid for somebody that is going to live for eternity. He thinks very short term and it creates problems. It creates a lot of problems for him and for everybody else that he drags into it.
Right. Oh my God, this has been very cathartic for me personally. I just have one last question for you before I let you go. I wanted to end with this segment that we call A Little Taste, all right? Because vampires are all about that temptation. Without giving away spoilers, can you give us a taste of what's to come in future episodes? A hint, a little something that we should be looking out for?
I was going to say despair, but like... That's Louis's whole deal, right? That's not something new that you haven't seen. More despair.
Cool.
Yeah.
Jacob, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and answer my questions. You are the best.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you for indulging in my waffling. That was fun.
Hi, Bailey. So nice to meet you. I'm Naomi.
Hi, Naomi. How you doing?
Oh, good now that you're here, girl. Now, before I get into my hard-hitting journalism, okay, because I am just, if not hard-hitting, okay? If you had the choice to be turned into a vampire at any age, what age would you, Bailey, choose, knowing you'd stay that age forever?
First off, I don't necessarily want to live forever.
Me
that's
neither.
just too much. Yeah. Like, life is precious because we don't live forever. So if you take that away, which we talk about a lot on the show, like, what do these people turn into? And Anne Rice, even, like, when she talks about how crazed these 200-year-old vampires are, like, they start going insane because it's like, what do you have? Like, what does love mean anymore if you can live forever? But if I had to choose, I'm only 19, and I feel like every year, especially since I'm still in my adolescence, I grow and I change, so it's definitely hard to say. But I am a Twilight fan, so let's just do it at like 19 and get to go to high school over and over again.
Okay, no, Bailey, honey, that's a young person's folly. No, honey, you don't want to go to high school again.
I'm a huge Twilight fan. I love the vampires. Also, like, they rule high school because they've done it so many times. And I didn't go to high school. And even though my brother always says, he's like, Bailey, it's not like the movies, which it's not. It really is not. I just would love to be like, just come in, go to different states, different countries, and get to experience what that's like.
That is so funny. I mean, as a vampire fan, I do love Twilight as well, even though I was a bit older when, I was reading the books. So it was funny because I was like,
the books?
Yes.
I was like, yeah, I was like 10 watching Breaking Dawn Part 2 like this with my eyes closed. I was like, oh, honeymoon.
Well, it's funny because one thing I like about this show so much, but in general with vampires, what can kill me with Twilight is Edward's like always brooding. And it's like, honey, you're hot. You're living forever. Have some fun with it.
Yeah, but Lestat and Louis do that too. Claudia's the one that's out here like just doing her thing.
Well, exactly. I mean, how did you find yourself relating to Claudia's journey?
I do remember what it's like to be that young. But then again, Claudia matures so quickly. And there's something special about her growth. But I think everyone can connect to the fact that she wants her own power. But then she still needs the person that raised her, Louis. And I feel like as kids are growing up, we have that, a lot of those moments where we're like, oh my gosh, we love our parents so much. We need them. They have gotten us to this point in our lives. But who are we without our parents? And that's something everyone can connect to when they watch this show.
Well, this is why, honey, we have you on the pod, because you have to tell the people, okay? You have to tell the people what went into the art. They can't just be thinking you just show up one day and you're like, look at me, I'm a vampire teen. I mean, I assume Jacob, who plays Louis, and Sam, who plays Lestat, had already been filming for a while before you joined the set. So what was it like coming onto the show? And I mean, this episode has you really thrown into the deep end.
My first scenes on set was the scene where Claudia almost kills herself. The scene... Yes.
No, the first one?
That was my first week.
Wow.
My first week was the scene where Claudia almost kills herself. The scene where she gets changed and I'm like burned.
Yeah.
And then the scene where she kills Charlie. That was all in the first 10 days.
Oh
yes.
my God.
So, Bailey Bass, this is your first time on a show. You're just gonna do all these things.
Yep. Trial by fire. It was very deep end, but in a way, like, hearing it, like, I know that I would be terrified, but at the same time, it's almost like, let's do all the hard stuff first. While your energy is there, you're excited, you don't have too much time to get in your head about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, dive in. Okay, let's do this. Welcome to New Orleans.
But I will say, the scene at the end of episode 4 that people see is not the scene that I did the first week. We redid it. And because Roland Jones, the writer, was like, this is not powerful enough. At the end, Lestat and Louis came out of their coffins and they were just stunned by what they were seeing, which is Claudia burning her arm. But we changed it, as people will see in episode 4. If they're not there, this is a moment she has herself, which is very powerful, because where she ends, where she's screaming. And that was the first take. Roland was like, I just want you to yell. And I was just like, literally my voice is cracking yelling, because it's like, I just want to be free. She just wants to feel something because she feels like nothing.
Let me tell you something, you stuck-up, flower-covered, $3 fancy fucking paper diary. I'm doing just fine. And how do I know that? Because the first man I killed called me the devil. And the last boy I killed, the last boy I'll ever love in this world, called me an angel. So that means I'm on the right path. And that means there's so much more fun out there to have. I'm just getting started.
How much time did you, Jacob, and Sam have to talk about the family dynamic, to hang out, to get a feel for each other before the camera started rolling?
Barely any time, because I came in to New Orleans in episode 3 and they were already there for episode 1 and 2. And we work so much that anytime we're not on set, we want to sleep. I mean, if I'm being completely honest. But I do remember the first time I did my first scene on set playing Claudia, and Jacob is like clapping and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, you're here, like we're all together. And I was like, it was really precious.
Oh my God, he's an angel. He's an angel. That's so sweet. But it does definitely also set up this kind of like, you know, Louis, and him doing that is very much like, okay, this is our dynamic. Louis is excited for Claudia. He has hopes pinned on Claudia. Claudia is going to fill in a God-sized hole. And Claudia did not sign up for that.
You know, that's Louis, the person that's raising her. She doesn't have everything that she owned before she was turned into a vampire. That is gone. So everything that she knows about society is through Louis's mouth.
I want to talk about the extent to which you built this family unit with Jacob and Sam. First of all, here's my question for you. why do you think Louis even had Lestat turn Claudia? Because when I talked to Jacob, I go, Jacob, does Louis not know what a teenage girl is? I was like, if you want a friend till the end, it is not a teenage girl. Okay. So you have got to think this through. For you, what do you think it was, when you're doing the work in episode 4, which is pretty much the introduction to these two men, this relationship, and then Claudia's place in that relationship? What are your first thoughts?
Thoughts on them turning?
Yeah, because it's true, like Claudia's
girl
having fun, but at the same time, as we know from the end, Claudia's angry. Some years pass and she gets mad.
Well, we see that evolution of all the feelings she feels. And I always go back to the fact of the science. I love science in school. And her prefrontal cortex will never develop because they stop that. And the prefrontal cortex is what, makes adults choose right from wrong. Before that, teenagers, they just go straight from emotion. And that is something that I remembered over and over again playing Claudia, because that part of her brain will never develop. So yes, she's maturing based on her experiences, but she will always be someone that acts by emotion first and then is like, wait, so I wasn't supposed to do that because of this? Because, wait, did I hurt your feelings?
Right.
She's just going straight from how she feels. And she feels deeply, very deeply, which is why her feelings are so grand, which is why when she hurts Charlie, it's like the end of the world for her, which is why when she finally feels love from someone else besides Louis and Lestat, it's like she doesn't even know how to express how incredible that is.
What do you think Louis is trying to get from Claudia that he can't get from Lestat?
He wants a sister. His relationship with Grace is not, it's just tearing away bit by bit. And he just wants a sister, and that's what he gets from Claudia. But then he also wants this family unit. But then it gets really dark because Lestat, honestly, it's so
it's true.
twisted.
I've seen the whole thing, honey. It gets dark.
Yeah, it's because Lestat, think about it, Lestat owns Louis. Let's be honest. I think Louis wanted to own someone. And in some parts, you see Louis does own Claudia, but she goes by feeling. She doesn't think things through, that she's kind of like trying to rip out of this box.
You're wondering if your nails will be like that forever. And the answer is yes.
How'd you do that?
You'll do it too, in time. My little milkweed. I'll teach you. Just like I taught Louis here. But not if we're going to have family secrets.
We're a family?
Yeah. But with no secrets.
All right. So what's that for?
That's where we burn bodies.
Why do we burn bodies?
Now, I was curious as to, you've talked about building Claudia, right, and doing the backstory, doing the writing. How much did you engage with or utilize Anne Rice's books? Because obviously your Claudia's older, your Claudia's Black. It's a different situation, but at the same time, you got a whole 13-book series. So it's like, how do you kind of choose to engage with that and when?
It's different, but the essence is still there. Claudia is still raging. Because we chose to age her up, because Roland chose to age her up, she's stuck with these raging hormones. And that's something that's different, but I think was very, very necessary to truly understand. We get to touch upon what it's like to be a woman, the only woman in a household of men.
Right.
We get to touch upon what sexism feels like sometimes, what it feels like to be the only one. She doesn't really have any girlfriends. She doesn't have a mom. And you see how that affects Claudia. And I think it was just really interesting to play around with that. When I read the books, I annotated them like crazy.
Wow.
Like crazy. Anytime Claudia felt something deeply, anytime she loves art. That's something that you learn about Claudia when you read the books. And that's something that I add into my backstory. And then I made a Google sheet of comparing everything in the book and everything. I did so much writing. Very type A. Everything in the book and everything in the script. And then I would compare what lines are the same, because Rollin is a huge fan of Anne Rice's books.
Yeah.
And he was very intentional about even like using her writing in the scripts.
Right. I mean, there's definitely a lot of love for Anne's original books in the show. But you know what? I have a lot of love for you, because you know what? Things take a dark turn for Claudia as this episode goes on. She falls for a cute boy, but then, well, let's listen to a clip.
I was, and I bit him, and now he's...
It's easy to get carried away when you're young and in love.
Please save him. Turn him.
I can't.
You can. You did it to me.
He's dead. You didn't have to kill him. You killed him completely.
Lestat.
Just try, please.
You drained him dry. Now go on. Clean up after yourself. Remember this? His face as it melts. This is why we never get close to mortals. Because sooner or later, they end up dead.
Punch me in the gut, okay?
It's really hard to hear those, especially because we're listening to it. And now I'm hearing it with the score as well, which makes it,
I can't take it. For a character that we've only had an episode of, Claudia goes through every trial imaginable. I mean, my God. This vampire life has come with a whole lot of strings and a whole lot of destruction. And one of the things, you call Claudia calls Louis like Papa Louis and then Uncle Les. And this for me is one of those scenes where, you do see the difference in their relationships. Because on one hand, Lestat is educating Claudia. At first, it seems like he's nice, right? Where it's like it's easy to get carried away when you're young and in love. But then he really does seem to be relishing in her being in pain. Like really kind of tossing it off like, okay, clean up after yourself. It's like he's having a little fun with that moment in a way that to me really dictated the relationship between the two of them from that moment on.
Yeah, the power dynamics between Lestat and Claudia, they changed, and it's a flow, and he has a lot of power right now and he uses it to advantage. It's almost like he gets off from it. Mm-hmm. He likes having the power and he needs to establish it and make Claudia sit down, and she refuses to. Mm-hmm. So they're always gonna butt heads because of that.
Right. Do you think that Lestat is right when he says, this is why we can never get close to mortals, because sooner or later they end up dead?
I'm never going to think Lestat is right. I freaking can't stand it. It's like...
Me too. Me too.
Literally, when I watched the episodes, it was 2 months after filming, and I just was like, are you effing kidding me? I'm that viewer that's like in the screen. Like, you better, don't you dare. It's like I'm watching reality TV. And I even remember reading the script, and it's just like, I'm like gasping and I'm making inaudible noises because it's just like, are you freaking kidding me?
I know. One last thing. We like to end the show with what we call a little taste, which is the vampire's specialty, temptation, okay? And I would love if you could give the viewers, without giving any spoilers, a taste of what's to come. What is something coming that you think people are going to be surprised by, something that they're not expecting?
The biggest part of this show is the fact that there are no villains, but then maybe we are all villains. And it's proving how complex all relationships are. Everything is based on perspective. How we feel about each other is based on perspective. And Rollin did an incredible job of showing Louis, Lestat, and Claudia's perspectives and why we do the things that we do. And that mastermind is going to play into every single episode. It's really just an ongoing chess game, and you're just on the edge of your seat seeing who's going to win.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Edge of my seat is right, Annie. Now, Bailey. Bailey. Thank you so much for coming, taking time and talking to me, all things episode 4.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I learned a lot while I'm sitting here talking to you. It's been dope.